Haas.
How you doing?
Hey, Daniel Ott from the Edge Television Broadcast.
Doing pretty well.
All right, very good, very good. George, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Busy season that we're bound here.
It is busy, but you know, there's nothing better to do before the official day, and that's talk about Mars. And I don't really know how I can make that connection, but I'm going to have to because we're doing a show on it right now.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
All right,
let's do it.
Well, all right, let's do it, George. Well, welcome to the show. Man, here it is. You're a founder of the Cydonia Institute and a member of the Society of Planetary Research. George, why have you turned your eye to the sky, and what are you searching for?
Well, I've been doing this for, over 25 years, and I got interested in surface features on Mars with the original Face on Mars, and that's what got me interested in doing this research.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've all seen that face. Now, every time it seems NASA updates their pictures, or I don't know what they do, but all of a sudden things start to deteriorate or come up missing from their photo library. But that really doesn't work, does it, George? Because everyone that's in the know, so to speak, or as a researcher, perhaps as yourself, will capture those images, and when they're changed, it's like we got them, man. They're altering the images.
Yeah, well, the Face on Mars, NASA, over the years they've continued to say that it's just a natural formation and it's of no scientific interest. But they have taken over 25 images of that formation between the Mars Global Surveyor and the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and the Themis camera. So over the years, they've taken numerous pictures of that formation. Mm-hmm. And so we have a lot of data to look at that NASA has graciously afforded the public to look at. Mm-hmm. It's just that, you have to have the time to go onto the NASA websites, find the images, and do a lot of research. And the images are there. It's just that, it's a little much of a hurdle to try to get through the amount of data that they have stored for just your average person to try to access this stuff. It's pretty intensive.
Are there any private telescopes that can zoom in on Mars and see these anomalies?
I don't know if there's any earthbound telescopes that are capable of doing what the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and the Mars Global Surveyor and those type of cameras are able to do, the ones that are orbiting the planet. That's the data that we're using. Mm-hmm. And tonight we'd like to talk about this three-sided pyramid that NASA took pictures of with one of their older cameras, the Mars Global Surveyor, back in 2002. And we've been working on this formation for over 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I have those images, George. Which one do you want to start with?
Do you have them up on your site there?
I sure do. You name them, and I'll put them right there.
All right, well, we could start with the images that I've labeled A, which is the original Mars Global Surveyor images, the mock images from 2002 and 2003. Well, this journey of ours all started back in 2002 when a member of the Society for Planetary SETI Research, myself and William Saunders and I, we had a friend and colleague named Wilmer Faust that discovered this formation. Mm-hmm. This three-sided pyramid is in the Candor Chasm area of Mars, which is located in the western hemisphere of the planet. Yeah. Any of the listeners out there are familiar with the Valles Marineris area? It's right below there. It's about 5 degrees south of the equator, and that's where this formation was found. And Will Faust brought it to our attention. Back in the day, back in the early 2000s, I was part of a discussion board run by a friend of mine called the Anomaly Hunters, and Will Faust was a member of that. He eventually also became a member of the Society for Planetary SETI Research.
Well, George, I have that picture, and the folks are seeing that. There's a 2002 right next to the 2003. Is there a variance there that we're supposed to see?
Well, what we're showing in these two images is that the image was originally discovered in 2002, and you can see the three faces, the three flat sides of the three-sided pyramid there. Mm-hmm. And what we're showing here is that a year later, NASA took another picture of this area, mm-hmm. and it confirmed that we're still seeing the same flat faces on this pyramidal formation. So we're just showing that it's consistent in two different images.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
NASA had the propensity to say that, well, we took a picture of the face on Mars, and then later on we took another picture and it disappeared. Well, we're just showing here consistency in the data that NASA's taking these images, and showing that it's still a three-sided pyramid that we're seeing here.
Yeah, I see somebody just threw a comment out, said, never seen a macro symmetry outside of a spheroid. But those are definitely sharp angles there. And so atmospherically, could those angles be created?
The paper was written by myself, two geologists, and an image analyst. William Saunders, he's a geomorphologist from Canada. Mm-hmm. Then we have a colleague of ours, Michael Dale, who's a geologist out in Oklahoma, and Jim Miller, who's an image analyst, and he's up in New Jersey. The four of us have been working, like I said, for about 10 years trying to get images. Over 14 years, and we only have a handful of images that NASA has taken of this formation. And these geologists looking at this, the symmetry and the geometry that's in this is well beyond anything that you would see in nature.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. That was A. Let's go. You have another one here. Let me get back over here, and let's go ahead.
If the viewers out there, if the listeners on your program, they want to go look now at the image that we have titled B. These are two images that were taken, over almost 10 years later by the Mars Reconnaissance high-rise camera, the CTX portion of the camera. Uh-huh. And we have two more images of this. The first one on the left, taken in 2014, that was taken during the winter. And you can see the harsh shadow on that lower eastern southern side. I mean, very sharp lines there.
Yeah, those are very, very, very sharp contrast there. What are those rivulets that are on the east side and the sort of the southeast side, or the west side and the southeast as we look at it?
Oh, you're talking about the surface features, the lines, the dunes?
Yes. Is that what it is?
Well, the geologists looked at those, and what's interesting about those, they don't even look they don't look natural, because if you have wind coming off of the pyramid, it would you would see the lines of the sand dunes would follow the wind direction. Mm-hmm. And as you can see here, the sand dunes on the left side, which are on the western side of the pyramid, they all run horizontal, and then if you go on the 2014 image, on the dark side, you'll see that the direction of the sand dunes run southeast, which is contradictory to what you would have when you'd have wind running across the pyramid. The sand dunes would all seem to be following a similar pattern. Mm-hmm. In the science paper, if any of the listeners out there have the opportunity to go over to our website and download the paper, the geologists talk about the oddity there of these sand dunes. I mean, not only do we have a three-sided tetrahedral pyramid in the middle of nowhere here, we have these odd sand dunes that it almost looks like cultivated fields.
Well, yes. Well, that's what it looked like to me, like a rice paddy, so to speak. If one were to be on the surface of Mars and looked up, would we see a blue sky?
Well, there's a lot of debate about that. I know a lot of early researchers have looked at the, NASA with the rovers. They provide a color wheel, which is on the camera bed of the rovers. And if you look at the color wheel and you look at the surface and the sky in the distance, sometimes they don't seem to match. It's as if somebody keeps turning up the color on the monitors to change the skies from a bluish to a reddish. Mm-hmm. So that's all up for debate. I would think that from what I've seen, Mars does have a blue sky, very light blue, mm-hmm. and not a red sky mm-hmm. or pink.
Now, there is no known photograph of any life on Mars, is there?
I haven't seen any images of any life forms. From all of the information that we've gathered with the science data that NASA provides, Mars is probably a dead planet. There was probably life flourished on the planet at one time, and what we're seeing here is remnants of this ancient culture that was on Mars, especially in this pyramid here that we're looking at. But I don't believe there's anything there now. There may be microbial life. The civilization that once lived there was probably destroyed by some intense war that happened in the past. I don't know if you've ever had Dr. John Brandenburg on about his discussion about the nuclear wars that went on Mars, and he actually uses data from NASA's probes that have collected information about surface features and stuff that supports this whole idea that there was two massive nuclear explosions in the Utopia and Cydonia area on Mars that destroyed the planet, possibly with some type of off-planet war.
We have had some guests that made that same suggestion. George, a question came in for you. It says, are you familiar with DARPA putting a base on Mars?
With who?
DARPA. Are you familiar with DARPA?
Not really.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on then to slide number C.
Yeah, if we look at C, again, the two geologists that were working on the paper with us, they did this analysis. This is a Rolex geometry, which is a very high-level tetrahedral type shape that we're seeing here. As you can see, these three circles that are interact throughout the pyramid, showing this very complex geometry.
Well, it's accurate.
Pretty freaking amazing to look at this.
Yeah. So in I suppose the naturalistic or NASA explanation would be that it's just normal ebbs and flows of geological movement under planet, giving rise to structures or seeming structures or just edifices. But there's clearly is symmetry here.
Yeah, the three faces are very symmetrical. The flat planes of the three sides, and you don't find anything close to this in nature. Not even on Earth. You might find a flat face on one side, but everything else is distorted or it's elongated on one side. But this is very uniform, and you have to also account for the age of this. This is pretty old, and for this to be that well maintained at something on another planet, obviously, that was built, millennia ago, it's in pretty good shape. I mean, the lines on this are pretty sharp, and if this was on Earth, there would be no question that this was an artificial formation.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, George, is because we're getting ready to do another show, and we're going to be talking about the recently released Air Force videos from fighter pilots, which are pretty compelling. It's near what many consider soft disclosure because of the integrity of the people that's releasing the information in the videos. But that leads to the follow-up questions of that. They say it appears there is other world visitations. Then one would ask the question, what other worlds may come into play here? And here we have Mars, one of our closest neighbors, with what appears to be structures. And so really they could enter into the discussion of the soft disclosure.
Well, yeah, my interest in this whole UFO phenomenon is pretty limited. I think I've looked at some of the videos that were released. I'm not sure what the objects are. My knowledge of that type of data is pretty limited. I know a friend of mine on the internet, Mike Barra, had done some analysis of some of these. He thinks a lot of these releases are actual government projects that these pilots have seen, because he had compared them to some of these high-end vehicles that the government's working on, and they look pretty similar to what we're seeing in some of these videos. And they're very dark. We're seeing shadows and it's very high contrast. So there's not a lot of detail.
Okay, all right. Well, if we were to tend down that road there a little bit, then based on what appears to be structures. I think that's what we're talking about here,
right,
with these pictures, and we have a few more to show. That appears to be based on intelligent beings or some intelligent design or building technique. Then would we end it at that and say that even though they were able to build these symmetrical structures, that they would not have off-world capability?
I'm sure they did, and there's a lot of speculation about what happened to the Martian culture. Richard Hoagland was one of the first to say that we are the Martians. It appears that if they had some type of conflict on the planet Mars that destroyed the planet, and they had nuclear war and destroyed a lot of these cities, that maybe the survivors came here, and we're the legacy of this culture, and that may be an explanation for what happened to them. There's also the other scenario that possibly they were attacked by an off-world culture, and that's a whole other dilemma about why is it that we're sending out these probes, making other planets aware of our existence, and are they going to come visit us and be friendly, or are they going to destroy us like possibly they did to Mars?
Have you seen any anomaly, a picture taken by any of the rovers on Mars?
Oh yeah, there's about looking for artificial structures all over the surface. Yeah, if you look at these images, there's some great shots that NASA has taken around the rover, things in the distance. If you ask me, it looks like the remnants of a massive destruction. There's bits and pieces of machinery and all kinds of debris sitting around. Which goes right in line with Dr. Brandenburg's idea that this was a massive war that went on at Mars.
Yeah,
what we're seeing in the rover is all of this debris and parts of architectural structures broken, and bits and pieces, and machinery, and all kinds of metal. Things that don't look like rocks. Right.
And some of those have square angles to them.
Right. There's all debris with all these right angles and things that look like, one guy I saw, he had a picture, it looked like an old engine chassis or something, just, deteriorating out there. If you found that in a junkyard here on Earth, you'd say, oh, that's an old engine or a motor from an old car or something. But sitting on Mars, it's certainly not a rock.
Well, hopefully we're not looking at our future, George Haas.
Well, what I think we're looking at is a massive destruction of the planet Mars. There was a major war that happened. And it's pretty devastating. Even looking at this formation on Mars, you have two of the three faces are pretty pristine. However, the third side at the northeastern side is a little deteriorated.
All right. A quick.
Now, if we go to the slide D,
okay,
for the listeners out there that have access to the internet,
right.
What we're looking at here is this is the Mars Reconnaissance high-rise image that they took in 2007. We're dealing with images in this paper from 2002 up to 2016. It took us 10 years to write this paper because, science is very slow, and we're at the beck and call of NASA. We have to wait for them to take pictures of this formation and give us, different seasonal images, different times of day, so we can get to see how consistent this is. And so this image was taken in 2007, and this was the highest resolution image that was ever taken of the formation. And as you can see on the left side, we have an enlargement of this band here, and it looks like very segmented sections that look like, is it sedimentary rock or is this casting stones? It looks very artificial if you ask me.
Yeah, you can almost you can see the little the darker areas there that indicate that there's some formulated structure to it. Again,
yeah, and it's very uniform.
Yeah. Again, it really sharp contrast on the ridges there, the angles. But I notice now on the as we view it, as the viewers of the show can see, what we would look at as the north side appears to be degraded there. That could be atmospheric winds blowing south, or as we look at the picture, could it not be?
Right. Now the western face and the southeastern face are pretty pristine. This western face that we're, the lighter side that we're showing the detail, that seems to be very smooth. That's the most consistent side. Mm-hmm. If you look at the on the right side there, that southeastern side, there seems to be some degrading there, but the north eastern side is the most degraded. Mm-hmm. And if
many times they say there's storms on Mars. Do we know what the wind speed of those storms are?
I've heard all kinds of stories. Mars doesn't have much gravity, so wind really wouldn't have much of a punch. Mm-hmm. I'm sure a lot of the viewers out there or listeners have seen the Martian movies with these big windstorms that come in and blow people and tear them apart and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't really think. I'm not a scientist. My background is in art, mm-hmm. and that's what I bring to this research is my sense of sculpture, mm-hmm. three-dimensional design.
Okay,
but I don't know how much of a deterioration you would have from Mars atmosphere on these huge structures.
Mm-hmm. Let me get a question in here for one of our viewers here. George says,
sure.
What is the relationship to pyramids on Earth?
What about size?
Well, size or structure. Now, typically on Earth, aren't our pyramidal structures four-sided?
Yeah, most structures on the terrestrial pyramids and things are four-sided. You very rarely find a three-sided pyramid. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a perfect
Different
question
builder?
to lead us into the next slide, I think.
Okay, I'll move on over and get that next slide.
Right, out in Nevada, very near the Area 51, we have a three-sided formation that the government has built. We don't know what use this is, mm-hmm. but this is out in the Nevada National Security Site, and you can see this is a very sharp three-sided mm-hmm. pyramid, very similar to what we're seeing on Mars. Mm-hmm. And that's here on Earth. That strip that goes down the vertical of the image, that's a roadway. Hmm. And so you can get an idea of the size of this.
Well, now is that built by humans?
Yeah, that's I don't know. That's out in the Nevada National Security Site, and it's a big, huge mound that they built.
I'm surprised Google Earth let people take that picture.
Yeah, it's out there. I think that area was only you don't really get any updated images of that area. This is an older image from probably 10 years ago that I found on the internet. But this is basically the only three-sided pyramid I could find. You very rarely find three-sided pyramids. American Indians, they built 4- and 5-sided pyramids. These mounds, mm-hmm. pyramidal mounds out in the Midwest and stuff.
Listen,
of course, the Egyptian pyramids. Most pyramids are 4-sided.
Okay. Well, George, we have this question from Fast Blast from John out in Pennsylvania. It says, since there was evidence of war on Mars, then shouldn't we, Earthlings, be cautious that ET might bring their warring ways here?
Yeah, that's what I had said earlier. That are they going to come in here and be friendly, or are they going to, we're going to end up, devastated like what happened to Mars? Mm-hmm. Now we don't really know the details about what this nuclear war was on Mars. Mm-hmm. We don't know if this was an indigenous war between different factions, or if this was an invasion from outside the planet.
Yeah. And
Dr. Brandenburg, from his stance and his philosophy, is that this was probably an extraterrestrial attack on Mars.
Got it. One more quick question. We'll go to another slide. Is the surface of Mars actually red?
Yeah, it's like an orange, rusty color.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All righty. You ready to go to the next slide?
Sure. The last slide, we were talking about why the pyramid on Mars is three-sided, which is more of a tetrahedral, geometry, science kind of geeky type of shape. Mm-hmm. And we're looking at the degradation, the ruins of the northeastern side. So what we're doing here in the paper, we're just comparing this with a terrestrial pyramid, one of these pyramids found in China, and you can see the northern side of this four-sided pyramid is is degrading and a lot of erosion. Mm-hmm. So if you want to compare the erosion of a pyramid we see on Mars with this three nice sides of the three-sided pyramid, the three faces, and of course the third face is degraded, and we're just comparing it here with a four-sided pyramid on Earth, showing that this is a terrestrial pyramid that shows signs of degrading.
Mm-hmm. Another question came in. It says to you, George. It says, "What would it mean for our species if we found evidence that we originated elsewhere, socially, religiously, or economically?"
Well, I think that's one of the big questions, and that's probably why the world governments are trying to keep this information from the public. Mm-hmm. I think the evidence is growing every day, and from the images we're finding on Mars and the research that Dr. Brandenburg has done, he's basically proven that Mars was destroyed by some type of nuclear war. There's isotopes that NASA has measured on Mars, and they knew about this from the Viking missions when they were taking readings. So they've known that Mars was destroyed somehow, not by a natural phenomenon, but by some type of man-made nuclear weapon. And this is the big secret that I think the government knows. And I think it would be devastating for people to know that, one of our neighbor planets was destroyed by an unknown extraterrestrial culture. Mm-hmm.
Well, from what I've seen, in any sort of meeting, I guess, I would think, some of the movies that we've seen on First Contact was, they want to meet with the UN, some meet with the president, but I would say they would probably more likely want to meet with the UN. But what I've seen, our ambassador, Nikki Haley, the way I've seen her talking the last few days, if the ET would come to the UN, she'd tell them to get the hell off our planet.
I think Nikki would be pretty tough. That may be why they're not coming here.
Very well could be. Hey, somebody says, who's cleaning the rover's solar panels? Isn't there going to be dirt and dust flying around out there and stop the power? Or is somebody out there clean them, or is it self-cleaning?
I don't think they're self-cleaning, but they do seem to be. That's one thing that is kind of an anomaly, that if, Mars is supposed to be so dusty and all the wind blowing around, and, where's all the dirt and dust on these rovers? There isn't any. Which, that's another question. I can't answer it.
Okay.
That's a tough one.
Okay.
And I don't think it's, because they're on Earth and it's all just, a facade. Mm-hmm. I think these are actual vehicles that are on Mars.
George,
I don't think there's not as much wind and dust as they would lead you to believe.
Seems like I've seen several Mars movies where big storms come and people just barely hang on, and their little space capsule, their little survival places always get blown away and it's always destroyed. But in Earth history, Mars has always seemed to come up in the stories that were written. There's the gods came from Mars, and various things come from Mars. In so many different cultures, it has that sort of reference. Is that because there's truth to that? Well,
if you look at a lot of different cultures, of course, the Greek and Roman, Mars played a very prominent role in their mythologies. You find this in some of the, African, Egyptian cultures, a lot of discussion of Mars in the sacred text. Even in Mesoamerica, the Zip Monster was a being that was connected to Mars. And the Maya, the Olmec, and the Aztec, they paid very close attention, not only to Venus, but also to Mars. Mm-hmm. And even in the Maya text, there's stories about which archaeologists call, I'm not making this up, this is archaeological discussion with Mesoamerican cultures.
Right.
There's a phenomenon called the Star War, which was a war between Tikal in the Maya with a celestial unknown planet that they called which was connected to the Zip Monster, which was connected to Mars. So even in the Maya culture, they talk about this war that went on in the celestial sphere that was connected to Mars. So maybe there's some type of ancient, connection there that has reference to this war that went on. So yeah, Mars played a prominent role in all these ancient cultures, and of course, Mars was the god of war.
Mm-hmm.
You can't make this up.
Well, there you go. No coincidence there. But what's this Zip Monster? I've never heard of that one.
The Zip Monster, he is like an alligator or a caiman type creature, which is in a lot of the Maya the Popol Vuh, which was basically the Maya Bible, which dealt with the creation mythology. Mm-hmm. And the Zip Monster in the Maya culture was he was the patron god of Mars. And in the Maya city of Naranjo, which means orange. I mean, Mars is orange. Mm-hmm. The Maya word Naranjo means orange. And the Zip Monster was the patron god of Naranjo. And that's where the story of the Star Wars comes from, this whole celestial war that went on between Tikal and this unknown place that archaeologists have not been able to find called Sixth Earth Place. Now, Sixth Earth Place, according to my research, is probably the planet Mars. So the Maya actually have historical records about this ancient mythological war that went on between this unknown culture and Mars, which was represented by the Zip Monster. Just, take out a book on Maya mythology and Maya art, and you can find more information about the Zip Monster.
Any reason why we see Mars as being red?
Well, if you look in a telescope, it's kind of a reddish-orange or an orange color. It's a rusty color.
Is that like an ore? Or is that nuclear? Is this what happened to a planet once it's nuked?
Yeah. Well, I guess that would do it. You're not familiar with Dr. Brandenburg?
No.
I will give him a call. You need to have him on. He's written 2 science papers about this, and he's also a member of the Society for Planetary SETI Research. Yeah. And Dr. Brandenburg basically proves, with NASA's own data, that Mars was nuked by not 1 but 2 nuclear explosions. One in the Cydonia area and one over in Utopia.
So 2 explosions would be enough to destroy the whole planet?
I guess.
Now,
and he uses the isotope numbers and everything. It's like, and these are non-natural isotope numbers that he's looking at. These aren't something that you would find in nature.
Okay, so when we're talking about nuclear, that's sort of a Earth knowledge in the period that we are right now, going back maybe the last 50 years, with starting with Manhattan Project. But those are sort of terrestrial things. Wouldn't a civilization on Mars have a different type of technology to blow themselves up? Well,
according to Brandenburg, the Martian culture was probably Iron Age, maybe a little bit more advanced. They were probably more like steampunk type of culture. Mm-hmm. And they were done in by a extraterrestrial culture that came in and destroyed them.
I figured they'd have like photon torpedoes or something like that.
Well, whoever took them out had the weapons. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know a lot about the subject, but I know there's a lot of ancient researchers that say that, India, there's a lot of evidence that there was nuclear explosions there. Mm-hmm. Over in the Middle East, in this Iraq. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of evidence that ancient cultures used nuclear weapons.
Well, the
Bible
looks can be misleading. I mean, if you were to look at the Middle East now, it looks like it's been nuked anyway, but it really hasn't. It's just small skirmishes for like thousands of years.
Right. Well, I think they use the evidence of the in the sand. There's all this glass that's been produced. Mm-hmm. Which goes right along.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but it sounded like you're getting ready to say were you getting ready to say there's some evidence of a nuclear exchange in the Bible?
Oh yeah, turning into a pillar of salt, all this kind of stuff. So that's a whole nother program.
What, turn into a pillar of salt?
You really might be interested in having Dr. Brandenburg on to discuss the whole demise of Mars. would make a great program.
Okay. Well, definitely send me a link to that, George Haas, and
I will bring it to his attention and send you a link to. I will find out if I can give you his email address and stuff.
Yeah,
and
I'll check
I'll
with
hook
him.
you guys up because I think it would make a great program, and it goes hand in hand with what we're finding here on Mars. This isn't the only pyramid. I mean, we have files full of this stuff, but the thing is, it takes so long to get enough data together to put a convincing, science paper together.
Mm-hmm.
No publisher for this type of work is going to look at your work unless you've got 3 images that confirm the structure. And to get 3 images of anything on Mars from NASA is pretty unique.
All right, George. So you've got these pictures; they're very compelling, and I have a D in my background now due to sharpness and high definition detail. Are you drawing any conclusions yet?
Well, in the paper, we conclude that we think there's overwhelming evidence that this is an artificial structure.
All right.
And, we've sent a notice out to NASA that, requesting additional images of this formation at different times a year, different lighting, and for, other scientists to take a look at this.
Mm-hmm. So NASA knows about these pictures.
Oh, yeah, well, they took them.
Well,
now,
they've
NASA,
also been known to delete them and airbrush them. I mean, there was at least one lady who worked for NASA claimed that her job was to airbrush anomalies on the moon.
Well, yeah, that goes back to the early moon stuff. Myself, personally, I haven't seen any evidence that NASA has altered any of the images from the Mars Global Surveyor or the Mars Themis images or these Mars Reconnaissance orbiter
George, speaking
I haven't seen any evidence.
Speaking of the moon, man, when the lunar lander, when it blew back up, when it launched to go to the mothership, there's video of that. Who was taking the video? Did they leave a camera guy down on the moon there?
Well, the story is they had set up a camera that was running, so when they got back in, they just set up a camera like you would do, put a camera and you and your kids would stand in front of the Christmas tree and have the camera take a picture of you.
Yeah.
They just set up a stable camera that would.
Well, but the camera tilted up to view it from underneath. Somebody tilted the camera up, though, George. I mean, did we leave a camera guy on the moon? I'm thinking that's.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they could have a camera that would, tilt up and follow. We're
back in the
1960s. They had some type of technology. They got to the moon. Yeah.
They had advanced photography back then.
Well, it wouldn't be advanced photography. They just have to have a
motion detecting. I mean, obviously
they would motion detecting or just a camera. I don't know.
So okay. I want to help me out here. Okay, so they're getting ready to blast off to go to the mothership. So they must have timed it too, right? Okay, so we're going to launch in 10 minutes. So they all ran to the ship, got in,
right,
knowing that it's kind of like your iPhone. You got 10-second countdown. They must have knew the exact time it'd take them to get in there. And then it was on so they had advanced timer, and then they had motion sensing to follow the craft as it launched off the moon's surface, right?
Right.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
All right. I would imagine they would have that all figured out. But the camera might have been sitting there, filming the module as it sat there, but they're not showing us that footage. They're just showing you the footage and followed it up.
No, not showing
but
that.
I'm not here to defend early
I know.
moon images.
Okay, we move on.
I know there's a heck of a lot of anomalies there, especially with images of wires going through the sand and stuff and behind rocks. And that's a whole other show there. Just to be quick, my theory is that we went to the moon, but because of the objects that we found on the moon, some of the footage was filmed here on Earth to show the public because there was so much stuff sitting around on Mars or on the moon that the public was not prepared for that.
Is there anything that you know of that Google has blocked out on the moon or Mars?
Images blocked out?
Yes, yes. You know how they have those, like on Earth, they have those like black rectangles and sensitive areas.
Well, I've seen some pictures of the moon where there's all these little blocked out bars going across, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. Well, it seems like they know something and they just don't want to know that. All right, last question from our chat here. It says, any living entities living in the center or below the... Is it possible that there's life below the surface of Mars, George?
Oh, yeah. I think if the further down you go, some of these valleys, if you go way down, there are probably liquid water down there. I mean, we've got images of, water seeping down the sides of some of these mountains and things. And I think if you go further down in some of these valleys where the pressure is different than the, higher up on the surface, that you may find, liquid water and microbial life. You might even find weird little fishes down there in the water. But as for advanced civilization, I think they're long gone, and any Martian is probably, related to us. Those are the Martians.
Interesting you said that. Seemed like I just saw a movie on Netflix the other day where a ship landed on Mars, and I guess they landed in the ice region, and they drilled down and hit water, and some kind of creature was down there waiting for them. So, but that's interesting too. I think it was like an octopus type of a creature. I don't know if you've seen that movie. You know?
Well, I think what we're going to find is in the next 5 years, when they go back up to Mars, that they're going to actually admit that there's microbial life up there, and that's going to be a big step. I don't think there's there's large creatures swimming around or running around on the planet. I think the planet's pretty much dead. But these extreme environments, they're finding evidence of life right here on Earth. I mean, NASA was doing this since the Viking mission, going around the planet Earth trying to find these extreme hot and cold environments and still finding evidence of life.
I think the name of the movie just came into us. It's called the Europa Report.
Oh, the Europa Report, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're a Mars buff, man, you got to watch that movie. But listen, another one in the movie Prometheus. Strangely, they have an octopus-type creature. I'm thinking, and then I had a guest on the program that says that in the afterlife you turn into an octopus. Is there anything about octopus that you can connect with Mars? Because it keeps coming to us like there's octopi out there in space or something. I don't know.
Well, again, I'm not a specialist on octopus, but I know octopus are very intelligent.
Yeah, they can make spaceships. They can build spaceships.
From what I've seen on the Learning Channel, they're very intelligent creatures. They can pick locks and break themselves out of aquariums. And they do very well with pressure. And, I wouldn't be surprised if some type of octopus was found living in the deep oceans of Mars.
Okay. Well, listen, George, we're right here at the end of the broadcast. Anything you'd like to say about any website or book or anything we want to say, go ahead.
Well, it is the Christmas season. If anybody out there would like to support this kind of research, if they like what they heard tonight and intrigued with, this idea of structures on Mars, this is our 5th science paper that was published in the Journal of Space Exploration. My co-author, William Saunders, and I, we've published 2 books. We had the Cydonia Codex, which came out in 2005, and then 2009. 4 years later, we had the Martian Codex. They're all available on Amazon.com. You can have them tomorrow if you have Amazon Prime. So, if anybody out there is interested in supporting this kind of research, pick up our books. You can download our paper on this current 3-sided pyramid for free. You just go over to the Journal of Space Exploration and type in the 3-sided pyramid at Candor Chasm, and you can read that. We also, if you go over to the Cydonia Institute website, we have a link over there for our other papers, 3 or 4 other papers that we had published. We have a discussion board on the Cydonia Institute. I'm also a member of the Society for Planetary SETI Research, which is a group of about 35 physicists and scientists. I feel honored that myself, with my art background, that they've accepted me as a member.
Oh.
So I wish everybody a happy Christmas and good New Year, and appreciate being on your show, Daniel. I think this is like my 2nd time on here.
All right.
And you've been very nice to me in the past, and I really enjoy talking to you.
Well, I appreciate you too as well, George. Thanks for coming on in a pinch, man, and we'll have you back. And be sure to give me the information if you can for Dr. Brandenburg.
I will. And if I forget because of the holiday here, send me an email and I will get that over to you. I'm sure your listeners would be very interested in that program.
Will do. All right, George. Thanks a lot now, man, and have a Merry Christmas.